Folks, we are in our second installment, really talking about what do future focused schools look like for gifted children? We've talked about what those schools look like for EL students. We've talked about what they look like for specifically African American students out in LA. We've talked about what future focused schools look like systematically. But as we get in our second installment, we've got Mrs. Moore. She is the executive director of advanced academics for Grand Prairie ISD. They're doing some amazing work. If you hadn't checked out the first installment, you got to go back, right? Because she was really talking with us about some amazing pieces about the misconceptions of being gifted. And with those misconceptions, I mean, how gifted children feel invisible in our systems. But today, she's here, and I've got another question for you. We've talked about building a culture. What does, for our family out there, for our successful practice at work family, our NDPC family, what does a future focused school or system truly look like for gifted minds? Talk with us about that.
Well, I've spent the last 18 years here in Grand Prairie, and one of the hallmarks of what makes things happen here for kids every day, when we say all means all, it means the highest ability to the students who have needs other than intellectual or learning needs. We
Mhm.
really embrace all of our learners. And so when we talk about that program service, we talk about professional development and
Mhm.
awareness of the different types of learners of the gifted population. And oftentimes, even in our society, we look at gifted athletes and we look at leaders and we revere them in the arts. But it is often hard and difficult to service a person who is intellectually gifted,
Mhm.
especially when they're in a public school setting.
Mhm.
And that we have this curriculum and the standardized testing and all of the requirements that we have to meet by the state. And so that divergent learner is kind of trapped in that system. And so what we have to do and what makes a better system is really tailoring it to that individual learner. And so we know that in special ed services that students have an individual learning plan. An individual learning plan works for a gifted learner. Having a specialized person, which we have GT specialists on all of our campuses, they have to go and take their graduate level courses, because that is a different type of expertise to
Mhm.
master, and also to help the other staff members understand that need. Even parents and even students themselves don't
Right.
understand what that really means. And then how do we accelerate students beyond that grade level when they
Mhm.
need it early on, as well as support them socially and emotionally. And you talked about earlier about they're not gifted in all areas. That is
Mhm.
absolutely true. And
That's right.
so, how do we help fill the gaps that they may have? Because
Mhm.
they may be mathematically gifted, and they know the language of math and understanding how systems work and patterns work, but then they have other areas of need with their language acquisition
Right.
and verbal communication. And so
Right.
those are just those things. How does a system work to help
Right.
that student excel to their highest potential?
Definitely.
That's what
Definitely.
we have to do, is educate ourselves.
Definitely. One thing that you really talked through and talked about is, and which is extremely important, is a lot of the times we think just because you're gifted in math, you've got to be gifted in ELA, right? And if you're gifted in ELA, then hey, you've got to be pretty smart in science. And it's almost like this like we categorize students. One thing that you said was trapped. We don't ever want children to feel like they're trapped in a curriculum, whether they're at the lowest part as far as their challenge. If a child has
Mhm.
challenges, almost where a child just feels like, I kind of know this and I'm ready to do something different. One thing that I can say that you've done in your department, and I've had the opportunity to actually see it for myself, is that, you guys have an actual school that is one of the best schools
Yeah.
across the state that you can
Yeah.
really go and actually see some of these gifted strategies in action. Mrs. Moore, talk with us about that school, because I'm telling you, I've been there, folks, and it's big time. I mean, it's on another level. I mean, you've got children from all over the district that are coming, and the things that they're working on, I'm positive they don't feel trapped based on the level of curriculum that's going on there. Tell us a little bit more about it, okay?
You're referring to the School for the Highly Gifted, and it is for those learners who have those high abilities. There's a 3-tier assessment process to apply for that school, because we have gifted services, and as I stated earlier, gifted specialists on all of our campuses. But that 1% of groups of students who need to accelerate within the school year, the School for the Highly Gifted is able to service students' needs in that way. And all of our staff members at the School for the Highly Gifted are specialized, trained, not just getting their supplemental GT courses, 30 hours foundational courses, or the 6-hour updates, which is what the state mandates. But as I said earlier, all of our specialists have that graduate level. Some have a master's in gifted education. This matters because when we're talking about a student, we had a student who was 5 years old, and he was already learning the calculus concepts. But he was 5. And of course, I don't even know how he survived kinder. But you need programs so that we can service students who have those needs, who have the abilities, but also someone who won't say, you're gifted, you're supposed to know this. That is not true. Or the pressure of feeling like you're supposed to know, the perfectionism that we see, the social and emotional ineptness that we see. There's a misconception, going back to that first conversation, about what that really looks like. And I won't say, especially when we're talking about diverse communities, that we really understand intellectualism. We actually want to stifle it in some ways. And so we have to be aware of what that really looks like, and why is this ability a need to serve society?
Definitely.
Because that's what we're trying to do.
Right. I love what you said, because, I mean, let's say, a 5-year-old that's able to do calculus, that's not something that, like, how do we challenge that student, in a regular system? And I would say that I would like superintendents all across the country to really, and leaders and teachers, to really go and really, I'd say, really visit the School of the Highly Gifted, because a lot of those strategies you can put in regular classrooms to really connect with students and re-engage them, right? Like, a lot of the strategies that I saw were these engaging strategies, man, that I felt like if those strategies, maybe not the actual content, but the strategies, the way that the children were engaged, could be facilitated all across the country, folks. And if you're in the Dallas area, you have got to go to Grand Prairie ISD. Mrs. Moore and her team, the entire district, they are doing some amazing work there. You've got to go by the School for the Highly Gifted to see those strategies. Talk with the actual teachers there. Their mindset is not a mindset of command and control. It is truly a mindset of how do we inspire, how do we engage, and how do we create an opportunity where all children can be successful.